The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NBA.
Jordan Ott, the next head coach. 4-year deal, first-timer.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast.
So much to get to with the hiring of Jordan Ott as the next head coach of the Phoenix Suns, the 4th in 4 years, as we all know. Joining me to break it down, as always, from the Wild West Valley, my fellow Suns Credential media member. How are we feeling, Ben Garcia?
Cleveland! This is for
jersey?
you! Yeah, it's
Wow.
a LeBron jersey that I didn't know I'd be using for a Locked On Suns show 7 years later when I bought it. I make the Cleveland joke, but should we just start playing the Michigan State Spartans like fight song? Should we just start doing that? I mean, listen,
Do you
man.
know it? I don't know it.
No, I don't even know the ASU.
We got to learn it.
Man,
I feel like we're going to
ASU.
have to recite it to be able to enter
Hey.
the building going forward.
You feel aligned? You feeling aligned?
I do.
You feel it? Okay. Jordan Ott, new head coach. Can't say I'm surprised.
Nope. Can't say I'm surprised. Although I picked it and you didn't. You picked Johnny
You
Bryant.
did.
I said it would be Ott.
I went down with the ship when I saw it, but I mean, I can't say I was surprised, but
No.
yeah, God. Social media is a hellscape right now, man.
Yeah, I will get to all of it. We definitely will. And I think some of it's fair, some of it's less fair. But just to quickly go back over his resume so we know what we're talking about here. He is obviously a first-time head coach. He is the Cleveland Cavaliers assistant, not the associate head coach. That was the other guy. He has worked under Mike Budenholzer in Atlanta. He has worked under Kenny Atkinson, Steve Nash, and Jacques Vaughn in Brooklyn, and Darvin Ham with the Lakers before most recently under Atkinson once again for the number 1 seeded Cavaliers. He is a young guy. I would say, around...
I think he's 32. I think he's a little bit older than that. That's not right.
Yeah. But
I think he's 39, 40. He's 40.
younger than
40 years
Vogel, younger than Bud. This is a different breed of guy and an offensive tactician. You know, we talked about the other day, he was Steve Nash's, called by Steve Nash, and we'll get to him later. But in Brooklyn, during the time when Durant and Kyrie and Harden were there, a super team with championship expectations, this is the dude who was dialing up that offense for a first-time head coach in Steve Nash and was a trusted kind of right-hand man. So there is a resume there, Ben, and I think that's kind of where we have to start. This is a guy that we said Johnny Bryant felt like he was next up. You know, by the end of the week, maybe he's the Knicks coach. I don't know. But that's not to say that Jordan Ott is a Brian Gregory of coaches or somebody who is purely getting this job because of who he knows and where he's been. This is a dude that has accomplished a lot and I think could do a very good job as an NBA head coach.
I agree. It's all the things that you said. I'm not even going to mention, I joked about in the beginning the Michigan State stuff, but I don't even want to mention that. There's no reason to. I'm not coming on here today. Like, did I want Johnny Bryant to get the job? Sure. But Jordan Ott was under Kenny Atkinson twice. I like Kenny Atkinson a lot. I'm not going to come on here whining and crying like a lot of people are doing. Jordan Ott has earned the right to be a head coach. I know just as much about him as I knew about the other candidates. Sure, he wasn't my top 5 head coaching guy, but they hired him, and I'm okay with it. And from, the guy that I've talked to who covers Locked On Cavs, that was his guy. Jordan Ott has earned a spot to be a head coach in the NBA. The one thing I will say is if Johnny Bryant, let's say he does get the job with the New York Knicks, those two are going to be conjoined at the hip forever and see who has the better career in terms of head coaching. So I'm all for it, man. I'm not going to do this whining and crying thing that you and I did with Brian Gregory, and we had the right to do. This guy's qualified for the job.
I do think maybe tomorrow we can dig into that more. Why it's different, right? Because, but briefly, like, my issues with Brian Gregory were the lack of a search, the lack of expertise, the lack of experience, not expertise, experience, the lack of a resume that would make an NBA executive ready to be a GM, and what he said at the press conference, where he basically said that the reason he got the job and what he's going to do while in the job all go back to Matt Ishbia and the relationships that he has with Ishbia and Bartelstein and the other guys who got promotions and whatnot. I didn't like that. There was a search this time. Jordan Ott does have the experience and a lot of it that I've pointed out things, Bruce Brown playing center for the Nets, or, you know, what they were able to do taking that Lakers team to the conference finals in Darvin Ham's first season, much way ahead of schedule, fitting guys in like D'Angelo Russell, who you wouldn't have thought would necessarily work out there, and helping Austin Reeves develop. There's a lot you can look at. And we'll see what he says at the press conference. But I think it would be an overreaction to say that the only thing he's going to do is have this type of alignment and everything else. But we'll get to that more in a second. The one thing that this guy does have that you and I had been hoping for, that we were kind of worried might not end up being the case, is he's an offensive guy. And I think that that's a big thing that you have to focus on rather than just getting hung up in the narratives, is everywhere he's gone, this dude has gotten big kudos from big names in this sport for his tactician ability, his innovativeness, his creativity, player development on the offensive side of the ball. And we know that this team is going to need that to put Book in better positions to succeed, to help the young guys develop into better offensive players, whoever this roster ends up bringing in this summer, versus the past 2 years where it's just been slow, ISO, disgusting to watch basketball. I'm excited to see what he can do.
I'm excited for it too. I'm not going to come on here and complain. I think you had mentioned he's earned the spot to be here. I wanted Johnny Bryant. It's fine that he's not here either. I wouldn't even say, like, I know he like, for the things you point out, he's an offensive tactician, but we've talked about this before. I don't know if I would classify Jordan Ott really as anything. I know he had a lot of say in the offensive side of the ball, but especially in Cleveland. But I mean, like, listen, man, Spoelstra, you've mentioned this before, Mazzulla, Pop, like, we don't know what their specialties are. Sure, I would say Ott probably leans offense, but like, what if in these conversations, like, they're just trying to find a leader too, and he was the best leader for the job? Like, at some point, we have to talk about this team, like, winning basketball games. I'm sorry, man, it's kind of in the future. Like, we'll talk about that when we get there. We have to start at step one, build a culture, have a leader. Jordan Ott, listen, I'll defend it. He might be a great leader. He might be someone that fell in line with Booker. I mean, gave him his word as well. So I'm with it, man. I think Jordan Ott's going to be a good hire for this team. Think about Budenholzer, right? We were all, myself, everyone was shaking hands and kissing babies at the press conference. That's how thrilled they were with getting Mike Budenholzer. And it didn't work out. And this idea that it's not change, it might just not be change for us. But what Ishbia is doing now is something he should have done a couple years ago. He's bringing in his guys, man. And he's doing it now. And you know what? I like the hire. Might have not been my first choice. But like, that's my ultimate first reaction to it is I think he's going to be a good head coach here.
And the reason it is changed too, we got to remember, right? If you're talking about, this was just, Ishbia had the final say when he met with them in Michigan, and all he can think about is, green and white and blah, blah, blah. You got to remember, in 2023, when they hired Vogel, the rumors were, I think that Ishbia probably wanted Nick Nurse first. Mm-hmm. Philly just stole him right away. Mm-hmm. Then you started to hear that Ishbia may have wanted Doc Rivers back then. And obviously that didn't happen, but they kind of snuck him in the back door for a late interview in that process, and I don't know what ultimately happened. I believe he didn't take a job that year until halfway through. and they end up with Vogel. Then 2024, Bud is the doc of that search, right? Bud is the Nick Nurse of that search. So even if this was heavily influenced by Ishbia, that also signals a change for him to not think of the old, stodgy, experienced guy whose name I know because they've been on TV or they've won a title before or whatever. This is a guy we have no idea about, a guy who is getting a fresh start. So I just want people to kind of like, if you have concerns about it, that's fair. But let's be specific about what the weaknesses that you've said, they very well could be there, but also things that are different about this and that could work out better than others.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
The finals are here. The Pacers play game 1 tonight.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast.
Game 1 is here for the Indiana Pacers, their biggest game in 25 years. Pending how the series goes, they could be playing their biggest game in franchise history at some point in the next 2 weeks. Remarkable. And this one's already up there. They fell behind early in that Lakers series in their first finals appearance. If they do better this time, they'll be playing some of their biggest games ever before you even know it. We're going to look at game 1, things that I think will be important, both for seeing how this series is going and setting the tone for the rest of Pacers Thunder, how adjustments could be made. As you all know, I have my own major thoughts on how important game 1 is to series, and the Pacers have won every game 1 they've played this year. They have never trailed in a series. Can they keep that up? So many things to keep an eye on, and it's very critical. Pacers Thunder game 1. And I think that the one thing that is immeasurable that everybody's going to wonder about, that I was kind of asking about today, something I bumped into a couple players and actually talked to them about, is the bright lights of all this. You know, it's Oklahoma City. The city itself is not glitzy and glamoury. They've played in Vegas. They've played in New York. They've played in Boston. They're ready for the physical big stage. But something that's been an interesting part of this playoff run is something that Tyrese Haliburton said before the Bucks series even started, right? Last year, they admitted it. That part of them was just happy to be there in the playoffs. And to their credit, they fought through that emotion and they won 2 rounds. And they made the conference finals, and they got a lot of great experience out of that. And Pascal Siakam showed his leadership, and that was all awesome stuff. It's all built them up to being the team they are right now on the championship stage. However, this year, because of that feeling they admitted last year, they did not feel like they were happy to be here. They had real goals of winning real things, and series plural again. And they have, and that's great. They have handled those emotions well. They've proven that they were right to have very strong aspirations for this playoffs. And yet, every round so far, this group, every single player on the team, except for Tony Bradley and the rookies, had been there before. They'd been to the conference finals before, or the second round or whatever. This is a brand new stage. If you are not Pascal Siakam, if you are not Thomas Bryant, welcome to a new round. You are playing in the finals for the first time. Maybe there's somebody who played one that I am forgetting and didn't win it, but I believe it is Caruso, Thomas Bryant, and Pascal Siakam in the series, and that's it. It's a huge new stage. And so some of the players I was talking to today, like, they saw the amount of media, and it wasn't like it didn't change their emotions, but it does make you be like, oh, it's the finals. Like, it's the freaking NBA finals. And their emotions haven't hit them yet because whatever reason, they've just been practicing. Maybe emotions don't hit them at all. Some guys are immune to that kind of stuff. But there'll be a moment where if you're a Pacers player or a Thunder player, you walk out of the tunnel in the Paycom Center, or you show up at the arena and there's a lot going on, or you will go to the scores table to check in, or your name is announced as a starter, or whatever. You watch the game preview on ABC tonight or whatever, ESPN tonight, whatever moment, it's going to come for everyone where they go, oh, whoa. Like it's the finals, right? Joe Lorenzi of the Oklahoma and asked Shai Gilgeous-Alexander a good question about like managing the expectations of the moment and things like that today. And so I'm going to, and everyone has talked about a million basketball reasons on the floor why this team's better and that player's better and this could happen and that could happen. And maybe it's all true. Maybe in a vacuum, all these emotions come out in the wash. But the finals are just different, right? Like some guys just shrink, some guys rise. And so how much do the bright lights of the moment impact these players? Because the Pacers have fought through it. They haven't had any new experiences till now, and that's great. But it is. It now is. And what does that mean? When do those nerves come? Does it fight off till a game 5, a game 6, a game 7? Do they look good right away? Can it be a competitive advantage for them? And that's specifically where guys like Siakam and Caruso are so valuable, who have done that before and played actual, real important roles on good teams to keep guys, in check, in line, whatever, about what's going on, what's coming next, how to manage this, if falling behind is or isn't a big deal, blah, blah, blah. That is the only thing that if I dive into anything today or anyone talks about anything leading up to the series, that is just incalculable. You just don't know. And there's a lot of big basketball questions separate to that. So let me fly in the face of what I just said and actually talk about basketball things that will be absolutely critical today for the Pacers, identifying how they're going to play in the series. Can they fight through some of the basic stuff that everybody thinks they're going to have to fight through in the series? Let me take you back to the Minnesota Timberwolves in the last round to talk about the Pacers, because everybody identifies what has to happen against the Thunder. You can't turn it over. You can't let them play fast. Guess what the Timberwolves did? They turned it over. They let the Thunder play fast. It's so easy to say these things. It's not easy to do them. And almost every game you'd hear someone with Minnesota in their post-game media talk about, we've got to have better ball security. We've got to take care of the ball. Intangibles, little things. And they got better at it throughout the series. They scored 100 billion points in game 4. But it was a struggle for them. And the Thunder love to force turnovers, and they love to score in transition. And that's why their pace is so good, and part of why their defense is so good, and part of why they're so miserable to play against. You can listen to Obi Toppin on this very podcast feed yesterday talking about how annoying the Thunder defense can be. Annoying was the word he used. I thought that was absolutely perfect. And so how does that manifest for the Pacers in these games? And the real question I have by using the Minnesota Timberwolves as the springboard is, can the Pacers do the exact things everybody knows they should, including themselves? It sounds so easy to talk into a microphone and look at you and say this, or for the Pacers to talk into a microphone and say this, or for anyone to say it. Don't turn it over. Just don't. That's great. The Timberwolves said it a million times, and they turned it over 18, 20, 17, a billion times every game. Too many. And the Wolves scored a bunch of fast break points. Look at game 6 of Pacers-Knicks. You think the Knicks came into that game thinking they were going to turn it over a bunch? No, they thought they were going to manage their turnovers like they did in game 5. They had 17 turnovers, and the Pacers scored over 30 points off those turnovers. Offense came easy to them. The Knicks knew they shouldn't do that, and they did it anyway. Whatever you want to call that, a lack of focus, a lack of execution, whatever, there are known challenges of playing the Oklahoma City Thunder. And how the Pacers do against those known challenges will be revealing, because those are the hardest ones to overcome throughout a series. That's the stuff that makes the Thunder as good as they are. If you look bad in those moments early in the series, it's going to be really hard to get good at all the other stuff to overcome those challenges. More specifically, the turnovers is a big one, right? Don't do it. This is one that for the Pacers, they'll feel good about, and they should. They don't turn it over very much naturally, but guys who have loose passes off the bench, that's basically everybody at times. Guys who have loose handles, Andrew Nembhard recently, Aaron Nesmith's when it gets away from him. Even Siakam and Turner have loose handles at times. They got to be crisp. Getting the Thunder those easy chances. Getting back in transition. The Thunder play like the Pacers, fast. They want to get up the floor. Very important. Do not let them score off of makes quickly like the Pacers do. Be ready for zones. The Pacers had to be ready for zones against the Bucks and Cavs. They were at times. They absolutely were not at other times. The Knicks made everybody forget about the Pacers zone struggles because they never play zone. The Thunder absolutely will. Zone will become a topic of conversation again in this series. Both ways. I bet the Pacers mix in some zone. They haven't had to so far in the playoffs. The Thunder saw a lot of zone in the regular season. I bet we see zone in this series. Has Rick Carlisle ever pulled out zone in the key finals before? Regardless, the Pacers have to be ready for zone. All these things, they sound so simple to be ready for. I just said them, and I'm an idiot. I don't know what I'm talking about. But the Pacers have to know. If they get bogged down by zone, if they turn it over a million times, if the Thunder run them out of the gym, it's hard to run the Pacers out of the gym. The Thunder have a chance to do it. That they're screwed. No other team has been able to easily do these things against the Thunder. That's why the Thunder are in the finals. It's not easy to do this. But if there's like a lack of focus or clear-cut plan to work around these things, that's one, concerning, because that's sometimes Pacers bread and butter stuff. But two, then the Pacers aren't adjusting to like unexpected challenges that they can easily solve. It's like they got to get back to basics, and the Thunder will be feeling great about how they start the series. So that, to me, beyond the intangibles, is some of the stuff in game one that I think is critically important for the Pacers. Do not lose the things that everybody knows are coming. Do not get beat by the challenges that I can tell you about from far away. There's a lot of micro challenges that I can't tell you about, and I can't wait to see how the Pacers handle them.
The NBA Finals are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action right now. When you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. FanDuel makes betting easy. Whether it's picking your favorite teams or diving into player props from three-pointers to steals, there's so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. You could place that first $5 bet on who you think will win the NFL Rookie of the Year. Travis Hunter is 9-1 to win the offensive award, but 10-1 to win the defensive award as well. I would probably take both of those. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
We've talked a lot about trades for the Cavs, but what if they just stand pat?
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
I've talked about how I think the Cavs need to make some changes this offseason. I think that the roster, they should not run it back. But the thing that I probably haven't spent time talking about is, well, what if they do run it back? And I don't know where you come out yet on whether or not they should or shouldn't, who they should trade or who they shouldn't trade. But kind of where I want to start today is, if this group decides to run it back again, which I don't think is some crazy thing to think could happen, what does it look like?
Yeah, so I think this is a great question. I do tend to fall into, I know we'll talk more about like what this looks like. I tend to fall into the same bucket as you, where I think changes need to be made. I think you've tried with this core for 3 straight years and you come up short 3 straight years. So you need to change something up. I'm not saying like blow it all up, but I think there are some ancillary changes that need to happen. But what's interesting, like you asked this question, and I was talking about this a couple weeks ago. Like, if you think about the landscape of the Eastern Conference right now, you have the Bucks with Giannis, who may or may not be coming back. It sounds like he is open to being traded, and he may go to the West. He might end up in the Western Conference in some capacity. You have a Sixers team that it seems like their window has basically like closed because Joel Embiid can't stay healthy. We have no idea what that team's going to look like. They were awful this year without him. So what does the future hold for them? And then you have a Celtics team that is going to be in a little bit of a transition. They're not going to have Jason Tatum next year. So that maybe opens up this window where everyone thought the Celtics were going to run the East for like, you know, the next 5 years. And now all of a sudden maybe it was just a 1-year thing. And they're like the Cavs, you know, sort of financially strapped right now. Like they can only do so much. Are they going to just run it back with the same group and keep paying these high tax bills, especially because they just got a new owner as well? So understanding like the landscape of the East, I think is key here, because on one hand, somebody like Kobe Altman could look and say, well, hey, the East is going to be weaker. At least we feel like it's going to be. We feel like we're right in the thick of things in this conference already. If a few things go differently, if a few balls bounce differently, if injuries, right, don't impact that series against the Pacers, maybe we're still playing. And if that's kind of the thought process, like there's certainly a case to be made as to why you would just keep it the same and say, hey, let's go back out and see like if luck, because luck is a factor this time of year. We know that. Like, let's see if luck impacts, like goes in our favor next year. And that allows us to, you know, go deeper into the playoffs. Now, there's an opposite side of this, which is in the same vein, like that's also maybe because the East is going to be more wide open. That's a reason to make a move, right? Like push the chips in the center of the table, go for it while you feel like there's an opportunity to make a run here. But it's more, it's less about what we think obviously, and more about what Kobe Altman thinks and how he approaches that question, I think is going to be fascinating.
Right. And I did spend yesterday's show, at least the start of it, because over at The Ringer, Zach Lowe talked about this on one of his podcasts, and I found it to be very interesting. But he went 1 through 15. Which Eastern Conference team would you most want to be for the next 5 years? And he had the Cavs at number 1. And it's hard for me to disagree with that. Like, despite the fact that they came up as short as they did in the postseason this year, which nobody expected. We all expected them to, at the very least, make the conference finals as opposed to losing in the conference semifinals in 5 games. But that doesn't mean that their future is not bright. Now, whether or not that involves them making a trade or not making a trade, I do think the state of the rest of the Eastern Conference matters a little bit in this conversation, because you look up and down the East, you bring up Milwaukee. If Giannis is there, like, the Bucks are going to win 40 games next year, and they're not going to be a threat in the playoffs because Damian Lillard's not going to play after tearing his Achilles, and the rest of that roster stinks.
Yeah.
Indiana, I think pretty good. How long is that team going to be together for a franchise that historically does not pay the luxury tax? I don't know. Orlando, are they ever going to figure out how to score points? I don't know. Like, I like a lot of their pieces, but you start looking up and down the East. I mean, New York, the Knicks fired their coach yesterday, 2 days ago, because they feel like they've tapped out that group. Like, you go up and down the East, and they're not teams that you would rather be than the Cavs. Like, this doesn't mean that there aren't teams that also have good situations they're in, but the Cavs are in a really good spot. And that leads me to wonder, okay, well, if they do just run it back and bank on, maybe being healthier in the postseason, or maybe not just seeing their offense collapse because they suddenly forget how to make wide open threes, is that a viable strategy?
So for me, I don't know that I can just like go into a season and be like, well, hey, if things go differently, it's all good. I think that, like, listen, I can understand from like a fan perspective. We were all fans at one point, right? Of numerous teams, different teams throughout our lives. I think, like, when you have that perspective on it, it's like, yeah, from a fan perspective, we always hold on to this, like, well, if this one thing went differently, maybe we're talking about, XYZ happening, So I get why that is a take you can have. I get why that is a stance that you can have. For me, though, it's like you got to kind of create your own luck here to a degree. And that's why, again, I just think you, like, changing something out, trying to make the team at least a little bit better, or at least maybe try to get under the second apron where you can have a little more flexibility is something that the Cavs should prioritize, because right now this team has only shown you like their ceiling is the second round. And I also wonder, and you obviously you were there, Danny, and as was I for Kobe Altman's press conference at the end of the season. And I can 100% totally wrap my head around the idea that there is another level to Evan Mobley's game, and that there's another level to this team that's very, very young developing, right? And so when he says that, I get it, but it's also now been his reasoning for this team's shortcomings the last couple of years. Has, like, this is the third year in a row where he said that exact same thing. Hey, we're still young, we're going to develop. And my big question that I have for him is, okay, how long can that be the excuse? How long can that be the thing you fall back on of like, well, hey, if we just keep developing, we're going to get over this hump eventually? Because at some point you might not, and you're going to have to make those tough decisions. And so for me, I'm like, I think that's now. I think that time is now. But listen, like, to put a bow on this entire conversation about, like, standing pat, I do think there's a viable argument to be had that, like, they could just try to do it all again. And if they do that, like, they're still going to probably win like 50 plus games. They're still going to be one of the top teams in the East. The problem is, though, like, nobody's going to take them seriously until this time of year. Like, it's going to be about doing it on this stage in May and potentially in June and getting over that hump finally. And no one's going to buy that they've changed unless they actually change out some of these pieces and parts. Now, that's not something that necessarily they worry about, but they have to think about, like, what this opportunity is and how close they are, and whether or not it makes sense to pull the trigger on something like that. And I would, but I also feel like Kobe Altman seems pretty reserved to the idea that, like, if we don't end up doing anything, we do stand pat, then we're going to be just fine. And I think we can still win a title with this current construction of the roster.
So here is what I think is one of the biggest gambles of standing pat. And I don't think that, I mean, we went from last season to the season that just finished with the roster really not changing at all in the offseason. Like, the two-way guys changed. But the roster itself really didn't change. Obviously, there was the trade in the middle of the season that changed things, and there was a change on the coaching staff, bringing in Kenny Atkinson and getting rid of JB Bickerstaff. But they didn't make a change. If like they quote unquote run it back, I don't think that they're going to bring back actually every player the way that they did before, just because I don't think that that's financially feasible. So maybe running it back is like Jared Allen returns and Darius Garland returns, which I don't necessarily think. I think one of those things is more likely than the other. But I think the biggest risk in doing that is not about how good this team is going to be, but one of the talking points that immediately happened as soon as this postseason ended was about mental toughness. And how do you can that be taught? Can it be learned through experiences? And I think the answer there is probably somewhere in the middle. And I don't think that this Cavs team is just absent of any guys that are mentally tough. I think that's unfair and not true. But I also think one of the biggest gambles would be that they learned this mental toughness from this series. Because I'm also at the point, Spencer, where if this did not teach this group of guys the required postseason basketball mental toughness that they need, I don't know that anything ever will. And if you're taking the gamble that this did and you're wrong, then I think things in the future get really dicey. I think we talk about where the Cavs are at in terms of their future for the next 5 years compared to the rest of the East. And I love where things are at right now for them. I think they have an extremely bright future still. But if you make the gamble that no, that loss to the Pacers made us grow up in ways that we didn't know we needed to grow up, and now we are truly ready to win a championship, and you're correct about that, then you can stand pat. But you don't know that you're correct about that. And I think that is a very big risk to take. Yeah.
No, I think you're 100% right. And I think, to your point on you don't know, running it back and just saying, they feel that way because of what they've seen, that is, again, just banking on this idea that, luck's going to fall in your, luck's going to go your way this time of year. And I just don't know if that's a legitimate, if you're a GM of a team, you can't just let your strategy be, well, hey, luck. That's our strategy for how we're going to approach this roster. That's not a way to really build a team. And the mental toughness thing is a great conversation. I've had it a number of times at this point, obviously, but I think to along the lines of what you said, there's a degree of mental toughness that comes with when you're in the playoffs, you learn it. You learn that those games, the intensity gets turned up. You learn in a certain moment how you're going to handle yourself, what you have to do. That the end of game 2 where they're turning the ball over on inbound passes and things like that. Those are where the mental toughness piece comes into play. And hopefully they learn from those things. But I still think there's also a mentality part of it that can't be learned and is just kind of innate in people. And that's where, as we talk about, should somebody be traded? Should they make a change with maybe somebody in the core 4? That's where I think it's how do you change out some of the pieces and parts to get more of that mentality on your team and guys who have experienced that already and kind of know what it takes that time of year to get you over that hump.